Imagine for a moment a quiet afternoon at Professor Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters. The sun streams through the ornate windows of the library, dust motes dancing in the light, illuminating shelves heavy with ancient texts and scientific journals. A familiar sense of peace settles over the mansion, a haven for the gifted, the misunderstood. But on this particular afternoon, for one young student, that peace was profoundly disturbed, not by an external threat, but by an internal, seismic shift. Jean Grey, then just a teenager, was experiencing something extraordinary, something that defied the very laws of time and personal destiny. She felt it as a whisper, a faint echo in the back of her mind, then a sudden, jarring intrusion. Not a voice, not a thought she could consciously decipher, but a presence, a feeling of knowing, of understanding, of connectedness to minds she hadn't yet truly touched. Her latent telepathy, a power destined to emerge a year later, was stirring, roused from its slumber by an unforeseen catalyst. What could cause such a premature awakening? The answer lay in a temporal anomaly, a ripple in the fabric of existence that had, quite literally, pulled 5 young, unsuspecting mutants from their past and thrust them into the bewildering complexity of their own future. Scott Summers, Hank McCoy, Bobby Drake, Warren Worthington, and Jean Grey herself, the original 5 X-Men, were now walking the halls of the mansion decades ahead of their rightful place in time. Their very presence, a paradox in motion, resonated deeply with the Jean of the present. It was as if her future self, standing just feet away, was acting as an unwitting psychic anchor, pulling her younger mind forward, forcing her powers to bloom ahead of schedule. This was more than just an interesting coincidence, it was a profound disruption. Young Jean's telepathy, blossoming prematurely, began to subtly influence the unfolding events. She wasn't just observing, she was subconsciously absorbing fragmented insights, echoes of conversations, flashes of futures that hadn't yet happened for her companions. This knowledge, even if not fully articulated in her conscious mind, was dangerous. It threatened to contaminate the timeline, to alter critical choices, to erase the very journey that these young heroes were meant to undertake. The stakes were incredibly high. If these 5 young mutants carried the memories of their future back to their own time, the consequences could be catastrophic. Imagine knowing the triumphs and tragedies, the betrayals and alliances, the very path your life was destined to take. Would Scott still fall in love with Jean? Would Bobby still struggle with his identity? Would Hank still pursue his intellectual curiosities if he knew the ultimate outcome? The delicate balance of free will and destiny, the fragile tapestry of causality, hung precariously in the balance. Enter Cable, a veteran, a soldier from a desolate future, scarred by battles, yet profoundly dedicated to the preservation of the past. Cable understood the true gravity of the situation. He was not merely an ally, he was the temporal mechanic, tasked with mending the broken threads of time. His mission was clear. These young mutants, these displaced fragments of history, had to be returned to their original point in time. But simply sending them back wasn't enough. The knowledge they had inadvertently gained, the experiences they had lived, had to be erased. This is where the story pivots, where young Jean Grey truly steps into her power, not just as a telepath, but as a mature, self-aware protector of the timeline. Cable could have forced the issue, perhaps, or sought out other means of memory manipulation, but he didn't have to, because Jean, with her newfound premature telepathic clarity, began to understand. She saw the tangled threads, the potential for devastating paradox. She grasped the enormity of what they had experienced, and more importantly, the necessity of unexperiencing it. It was a profound and deeply personal realization. To sacrifice memories, particularly such extraordinary ones, is a difficult act. To willingly choose to forget the incredible adventure, the encounters with their older selves, the glimpse behind the curtain of their own futures, this required a wisdom far beyond her years. But Jean understood that their future, her future, was not hers alone to experience prematurely. It belonged to the unfolding timeline. So, with a quiet determination that belied her age, Jean made her move. As Cable prepared the temporal conduits for their return, Jean gathered her strength. She reached out telepathically to the minds of her companions, Scott, Hank, Bobby, and Warren. And then, most remarkably, she turned her nascent power inward upon herself. With a focused will, a gentle yet firm psychic hand, she didn't just erase the memories, she carefully, intricately blocked them. She erected a telepathic barrier around the entire duration of their temporal displacement, shielding those experiences, those crucial insights, from their conscious recall. It was not an act of erasure, but an act of strategic containment. Imagine the subtle hum of psychic energy, the mental effort, the sheer force of will required for such a nuanced maneuver, especially for a power so recently awakened. Yet she did it. With a final surge, the young mutants were swept back, returned to the exact moment they had left, their minds blissfully unaware of the incredible journey they had just undertaken. The temporal paradox had been resolved, not through brute force, but through an elegant internal act of self-correction. When Jean Grey's telepathy finally and naturally awakened a year later, it was as if this earlier critical intervention had never happened. The timeline had successfully corrected itself. The knowledge of their future, which could have created a devastating paradox, was safely locked away, a secret kept even from themselves. This wasn't just a powerful display of Jean's burgeoning abilities, it was a testament to her innate wisdom, her capacity for self-sacrifice, and her profound understanding of the delicate balance of time and destiny. It was a mature and powerful act of self-correction, ensuring that the saga of the X-Men would unfold as it was meant to, without the disruptive whispers of a future unremembered. This subtle yet pivotal moment in Jean's history reminds us that true power isn't always about grand displays of force. Sometimes it's about the quiet, thoughtful choices that preserve harmony, that preserve what is essential, even if it means sacrificing personal knowledge or experience. It's about understanding the greater good and acting upon it with courage and clarity, even when no one else will ever truly know the extent of your contribution. What do you think about Jean's decision? Would you have done the same, knowing the risks? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this glimpse into the subtle complexities of time and power, consider subscribing for more stories and reflections on the extraordinary world of mutants. Until next time, keep exploring the limits of imagination.